Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. DDD. In our industry, it generally is this abbreviation goes for domain-driven design, and in rare cases, domain-driven development. But recent changes in our industry, like massive layoffs, so-called death of agile, and looming market saturation in software industry in general, may suggest that there is something really disturbing in the very discipline of how we make software. And maybe, just maybe, DDD should in fact be enlarged and understood as something really different. Hi, my name is Mateusz Trawiński, and today I will present you this lightning talk, the real DDD, Delusion-Driven Development. I'm a software engineering manager at SimCorp, and this presentation actually stems from very many conversations I had with Piotr, who is present today, and I believe this is a great example that it's really valuable to have meaningful presentation, meaningful discussions with your peers in the first place. And today, let's just start to understand the background for this presentation from a very simple Wikipedia definition. Delusion is a false fixed belief that is not amendable to change in light of conflicting evidence. Generally speaking, it's a belief so strong that it cannot be falsified by conflicting evidence or even your real life experience. And for today, I prepared for you 5 delusions me and Piotr were able to identify. The first one being the Agile Delusion. The Agile Delusion is a belief that we can create software faster with Agile frameworks. To understand this delusion, we need to go back in time to 2001. And to help you understand how much time has passed since 2001, this was a time when MTV still played music, Pokemon was something new, Nokia was the leader of mobile, and the dot-com bubble bursted. And in this year, group of colleagues met together in the mountains of Utah, driven by one single goal: to uncover better ways of developing software. And I believe you all know that it resulted in 4 values and 12 principles. And I believe you know at least these 2, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schreiber, inventors of Scrum. But I believe some of you know most of them. They were state-of-the-art software engineers. And if we could sum up what they came up to during their discussions and summarize it in one sentence, it would be something like not this. And now this was a real lightning talk. So if we can really summarize it, it would go something like this. We'll deliver small piece of the final product earlier and iterate its development based on real customer feedback so that we can validate what the customer is willing to pay for and validate our assumptions about what the customer needs. And very simple question, who of you ever worked in Scrum? Can you raise your hands? Okay, and who of you worked in Scrum where you actually had some kind of hypothesis to validate, some kind of like idea to be tested, and then during a sprint review after the sprint ends, you met up with your stakeholders, your customers, and during this meeting decided on what would be the extension, what would be the follow-up of the development during the next sprint. Okay, and how many of you worked in Scrum to deliver a fixed scope project? Okay, and this is probably no coincidence while for those of you who raised hands on both, because in actually most cases, this idea presented here was actually implemented like this. We will deliver the final product area so that customer pays. Very different to the original idea, right? So generally speaking, the delusion is very simple. You cannot deliver fixed scope software faster with agile frameworks because they were designed for a different purpose. Second one, the process delusion. This is a belief that the software development is a linear process. And to understand this one and where it stems from, we need to go back in time even beyond 2001 to late 19th century or early 20th century and the idea of the production line. The process started very, very far away from the final product with employees, workers delivering each piece of so-called value by a series of handoffs to deliver a final product, which can be sold to the customer and used. And this process might not look very like software engineering, but in fact, what we can observe quite frequently is this. Software creation process starts from some kind of like mythical customer, nobody ever seen, nobody ever talked to. And then through the series of handovers from developer to developer, it ends up on a customer's computer somewhere. And back in 2001, when these guys met to name something we now called Agile, Kent Beck, one of these guys I've put on one of the first slides, knew that actually software development process is so much different. It's not a linear process, it's a circular one. You start with writing a very small test that fails, then writing very small piece of code that you know that test passes, then refactor so that you can prepare for another cycle, and then start yet again. What we did with this knowledge? We applied a standard process thinking taken from the production line from the 19th century and applied it to software development. Where you can see it? I believe most of you can see it every day with this process we have. Either driven by the board or whether you're using Kanban, you're following the linear process. And the disillusionment about this one is like really very simple. There is no linear creative way of doing things, and software development is really no exemption. The third one is the mindset delusion. And this is a belief that we can actually change ways of working, change ways how we improve by changing how people think. To understand it, I will just use this Gartner hype cycle curve you're probably familiar with. And by no accident, this middle stage here is called throughout of disillusionment. So let's begin with a simple example of the blockchain. So several years ago, there was this hype about blockchain that it will change the world and actually be some kind of revolutionary change. Then we really found out that it's just a database with a lock. And then we found out that there are some very specific ways to apply this technology. Then we had the hype around drones. So we were quite sure that drones will deliver every package to every door in no time. But then we actually found out that human labor is cheaper and will be for any foreseeable future. So we are left with the couriers as we had several years ago. And now we're in the middle of the AI hype. And a year ago or so, some of the people were quite convinced that it will fire everyone and automate everything. And what we're doing now is generating some funny pictures with it or videos and so on. And maybe in foreseeable future, we will be able to actually use it to make a meaningful, lasting change with AI. Why do I bring it here? Because The hype cycle for all ways of working works quite exactly the same and not quite exactly the same. So every time it starts with a hype for a new framework, new ways of working, new ways to scale, and so on and so on. And when the curve falls down, it turns out it doesn't fit our company culture or people's mindset. What's the effect? Either we are left with thinking that people are not good enough for this change, or we are having some kind of fake change implemented. And this, in fact, leads us to a very important thing. Believe that we can implement this change, we can raise the curve by actually fixing people's mindset. I believe many times you've heard that, oh, these guys do not have an agile mindset. This team doesn't have a growth mindset. Those bunch of team members doesn't have an entrepreneurial mindset we need. And therefore, we will need to fix the problem itself. We need to fix the mindset. The problem is that you cannot fix the mindset directly, and that the real change really happens when you create an alignment between individual incentives and the goals your company would like to achieve. Unfortunately, there might be no other way. Fourth one, really important for me as a manager, is the manager delusion. And this is a belief that managers somehow by definition will lead and inspire their teams. And it starts with very simple assumption. We will promote our best people based on merit. They will lead by example. They will develop people around them. They will achieve the results, grow their business, and they will create a good working environment for everyone around them. Surprising that this picture turns very often to something like this. Managers tend to micromanage, become control freaks, push people beyond limits, force them to cut on quality to meet the deadlines, and in the end, push people towards burnout. Why is that? And why it happens so often? I believe the answer comes from this expectation map. Whenever you are a manager, you will have some kind of individual expectations towards yourself and your role, things you would like to have, team you would like to build, values by which you are driven. But those expectations are not there in isolation. There will be expectations from your manager. There will be expectations from your team and individual team members. There will be expectations from your product organization. And there finally will be the expectations from your company and general organization. And the very problem about this expectation map is that there will be fundamental conflicts between all the expectations, and you won't be able to deliver them all at once. You will need to make difficult compromises between each other. And if you are a rational manager focused on pursuing your career, you will most likely focus on these expectations at the cost of probably these ones. To get disillusioned about this one, it's like really simple. You cannot have a manager that supports the development of his or her team members if their performance review depends on something else. Final one is the leadership delusion. It's a belief that we can make someone else responsible for the change. And to give you some background for it, there will be a personal story. So a few years ago, my son came to me and asked this difficult question any parent would eventually face and just will struggle to answer. He came to me and asked, "Dad, where does the money come from?" I wasn't quite prepared for this, but I told him, to answer your question, we need to go to another level of abstraction and ask ourselves another deeper question. Why is the very reason we're doing business? And the answer to this is quite simple. There will always be people with needs, and there will be some people that will find a way to meet these needs. Whenever you're Apple developing new iPhone, or whenever you have a local store that is actually selling apples, there will be needs of your customers, and there will be people who will meet these needs. And in every organization, starting from most senior level, there will always be a fundamental need. A need for change. And there will be people and organizations that will come to meet this need. But it doesn't stop there. At the level below, there will also be a need. And there will be people who will be there to address this need. At the team level, there's always be the same need. And there will be people who will address this need. And at any time, at any organization, there will always be a need for change, especially in the times we live in. And there will always be people who will come with another idea, that you need Lean, that you need Scrum, that you will need team topologies or whatever, that you need another change fad. What makes it a fad? It's the truth that by being a leader, you really need to lead your change. You might be supported by people who can help you with it, but you cannot really have it as implemented by someone else. To get disillusioned about this one, I will refer to Craig Larman's quote, "As a leader, you really need to own your change and not rent it." Quick recap about the delusions and disillusionment. You cannot deliver fixed scope software faster with Agile, as DLC is not a linear process. You can set incentives, but you cannot set minds. You need to lead with alignment, and you need to own your change. This list of 5 delusions, it's not a complete one, and I would like to leave you with wishing you courage and curiosity to find your own delusions, and enough strength and commitment to become disillusioned. Thank you.